Hey, welcome into the podcast. That's Keith.
It's still funny the second time, isn't it?
It is funny, and I'm Jay.
Hi, dear.
Say, welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. How you doing? Nice little room you got going on there.
Yeah, it's the third stall in the Ford service garage. No, I'm kidding. Just taking my lunch break, recording a podcast. You know.
Yeah, I got you. It doesn't sound throny at all.
Fixing those power strokes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, wait till I get the flush sound effect, and then it'll be perfect.
Oh, yeah, there you go. You need to put you a toilet paper holder behind you, man.
That'd be great. Right about
there.
Over here.
Throw you a little graffiti up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it can't. Then it wouldn't be family friendly. Well, I guess I could, scratch the letter. Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
you could put like Parts Counter Guru on the wall back there or something, or Parts Counter Guru's mom is
in the trunk.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
how's it going?
I might. You be careful what you ask for. It's it's going well. How are you?
I'm good, man. We've had an eventful few days wrapping up.
Yeah, it's a lot has happened in a short time, and there's a lot more about to happen in an equally short time, I think, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. We put a video out on our YouTube channel about the new Corvette coming out.
Hey, what pray tell would that YouTube channel be?
That would be Parts Counter Guru is the name of the channel.
Okay.
But you can go to our website.
So if I search for like podcasting in the bathroom, it's probably not going to come up. But Parts Counter Guru,
probably not, man. Yeah, but Parts Counter Guru, yes.
Okay, got it.
So it's there. But and while you're there, people, please subscribe. We actually picked up 2 more today. As a matter of fact, which
by
was
the way,
really nice. Thank you very much.
Subscription.
So, but yeah, we put the video out there. It's been actually a really good video. It's been getting a lot of views, and I think just because people are so curious about this release, what it's going to be like. But as in the video, like I said, it hasn't been met with a warm welcome by some of the loyal current owners. So who knows? What's your thoughts on that? All
right, so we got a little news topic that we're about to lead in here too. So let's just go ahead and
live PartsCounterGuru.com.
We're gonna kick that can. So I think the most interesting thing to me, you've talked to more people than I have. I've talked to a few people. I watched your video. You talked. You had a hard time getting people to want to be on camera, but
yeah. There was and let me interject a little bit on that. I talked to a few people that were there that day, and when my timing couldn't have been worse, and I'll tell you why. Because most of those folks that are out there, they're showing their vehicle to win.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of judging going on at the time, and I think that there was some distraction with that going on. Plus, I don't think they wanted to be on camera saying too much about how their thoughts on it, the fact that they are members of a club, and I don't blame them. I mean, it could have some negative impact, but my one guy that I spoke to was pretty candid about how he felt about it.
So we're talking about this mid-engine Corvette that's just in any moment now is going to start showing up on the internet.
I can tell you that we are under 2 days. So we're almost under 2 days, yes.
And so my theory, now you may think this too. I don't know. We've kind of talked about this, but
yeah,
I haven't asked you your official stance. But
yeah,
my theory is that GM is intentionally moving towards a younger crowd by making a vehicle that's more of a performance track-ready vehicle. Like Ford did with the 6-cylinder GT. And they have realized that all these guys that are the old school Corvette fans, they're not going to be around forever. So we're going to have to start appealing to a younger crowd. Well, what that's done is it's been divisive, right? So my theory is that this is a gamble, that they're hedging their bet on the next generation.
Yeah, this is the playing field for them. This is the guinea pig year for this platform, I think.
Yeah,
if you will.
Right.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
it's
that
it's certainly getting hyped up, and they're doing. I mean, it's almost an Apple style reveal that they're going to do.
Yeah, it's going to be in Orange County, California. I think I think it's 7:30 Pacific time. You're going to be able to catch it on some speed networks out there.
It's a big deal.
It's a media. It's more of a media invite only ceremony for obvious reasons. And Keith and I, before earlier this week, I called the Bowling Green museum and the plant, and I talked to a really nice person that was very, honest, and said that there's not going to be a vet here, for the reveal for that day.
Let's reenact that. Here, you ready? I'll be the lady. Okay, ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, National Corvette Museum.
Hey, ma'am, can you tell me whether or not there's going to be I know the release is on Thursday. Can you tell me whether or not you're going to have one of those C8s out for display there?
No, we're not.
Okay,
Check back next week.
Yep. That's pretty much how it went down. No, she was really nice, man. She was not like, I don't know, man. You're almost Doubtfire-ish there. But anyway, throw a little British accent in there, man. It'd be right there. But
wait,
she was really nice.
You want to buy something? We have a souvenirs. Make sure you visit the gift shop. Okay, bye.
Come look at our new holes. So
it's. Yeah.
So it was all jokes aside, it was a very good conversation with her. She was very nice, and we talked about the fact that there are no tours of the plant going on right now for obvious reasons.
Yep.
They have been in the process of the changeover.
What did you say they stopped production on the old one? Like the last one was auctioned off a couple weeks ago, and they stopped production 2 or 3 weeks
June,
back?
They stopped production. It was the last one was in June, and they auctioned it off at Barrett's auction somewhere in the Northeast there.
Yeah.
It was black in color. And it was a hard top. I think it was not a convertible.
So we started talking about, hey, let's see if we can find a dealer. Maybe we can go get some footage to put on our website and on our media, YouTube. Yep. And then that sort of evolved into, well, wait a minute, like I live like 65, 70 miles away from the museum, the Corvette racetrack, which is a private track. It's their test track, but you can do track days on it. Groups do. I've done motorcycles on it. And the plant where they're manufactured is all right there in the same, like there's a highway that runs between them, but they're all in the same sort of chunk of land. It's all right there. And so we were like, well, why wouldn't I just go up to the museum? Surely, all things Corvette, right across the street from the factory, they're going to roll one of these out into the museum. So we thought. And so, it's funny you bring that up, because you remember all the years that all of the loyal Corvette enthusiast owners, you remember, it's like once or twice a year, you'll see these just massive amounts of Corvettes coming through the city. Yeah. Heading up to Bowling Green on Interstate 65. That's their pilgrimage, so to speak, right? Yeah.
So, to the point that you made earlier about what we think that maybe GM is doing here and what kind of an audience they're trying to reach, there's a couple of things that I find very interesting.
Who do these kinds of press releases appeal to, right?
That's exactly right. And they're going on the West Coast at 7:30 local time, which is Pacific time.
Come on, Jay. Nobody lives on the West Coast, man. I mean, who does product releases on the West Coast? Right? I mean, that's never happened before, right?
Who could that be? Rhymes with art phone? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, that's showing a hand a little bit, if you will. I think. And then the fact that when you read about some of the things that could be coming, like a hybrid version.
Yeah,
I read that.
Well, I mean, look, the new NSX is that, and it's but I would own one.
I mean, Well, again, it's a new crowd. I think it's a. Yeah. I don't think that you would.
That's a lap times car again, right? Mm-hmm. That NSX. Yeah. So. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, and then I'm here telling of a potential of a there's been some stuff on the drawing boards about potential like a vet SUV, kind of like the talk we're hearing about the Mustang.
Yeah, or the
SUV.
Lamborghini Urus, I think, was kind of one of the, and the Porsche Cayenne.
Yeah,
come on, man. Come on. Don't.
I know, but they're doing it. They're doing it. I mean, it's they're trying to appeal to that crowd, and no longer are we talked about how things have changed. I mean, the landscape has changed for muscle cars, man. I mean, and the people that are buying them are different. Yeah. So they've got to appeal to those guys. So, hey, it's just going to be interesting when it comes out. I said this to you the other day. I was driving down Commercial Avenue, man, and I could have sworn I saw one, and it had British Columbia plates on the thing.
Which would not be surprised, honestly, because of some recent theft. Chrysler, Freudian slip there. Chevrolet theft of some Corvettes. Near me. That's another podcast, but yeah. But that stuff goes offshore and out of the country sometimes before we can get our hands on it.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah, you never know, man. But no, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait for it to come out. I really can't wait for an opportunity to be able to see one, in person. I'm going to be calling around to our local dealerships here as well. There may be some up in British Columbia. If so, it's not that far for me to get up there, so I could take a day drive up and.
Be careful, man. It's crazy up there.
Oh, I know. You've been recently, haven't you?
I wouldn't drive a Corvette up there, but
it's a tough drive. It really is. I don't like it. It's that white knuckle drive, and I'm not a big fan of it. So, anyway, so
we had here. You know what this is?
That's a paper, and that's a lot of notes.
So
a lot of paper and a lot of notes, man.
These are now the red ink is me. That's my interview notes. But this. And this, where is it? Right here. So two pages. If I can get it on camera. Okay. That was one comment left to us on, I think it started on YouTube and then went to our website, or it started on our website and went to YouTube, one or the other.
Yeah.
But one of the first videos that Jay and I did was not on Corvettes, but on ethanol. Hey, do you think this new one's going to be flex fuel E15 ready? It has to be, right?
Well, again, and we can get into that. There's a reason why this engine would survive, because those are performance valves that are in those engines.
Okay,
and they are designed
made to take
withstand.
Yeah. They're more expensive.
They're more expensive. I mean, you're running titanium,
and
in some cases, you've got stellite face valves. Okay. I think so.
But I digress. So one of our first videos that we released out there was on the impending change from E10 ethanol to E15 here in the United States, and that was I don't know that it has been federally mandated yet, but it's coming, and there's been a lot of talk around it this year and late last year. And so we knew it was a little bit of a controversial topic from the standpoint of it seems to be very divisive, and the reasons for that are both interesting and odd. But Jay and I have looked at this like we always look at pretty much everything we do, which is from kind of an agnostic perspective of, well, what are the facts around it, right? Like, what does it do to an engine? How does the automotive industry handle that? Like, what are the factors? And that was sort of the perspective of the video. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, it was. And to say first too is that, and Keith and I are on the same page. We're not anti-oil.
No,
we're not anti-gasoline.
Well, you said it best when you said we are.
Right, we're not anti-ethanol. We are pro service life of an engine.
Yeah,
that's what we are.
I like to take care of what I got. I like to help other people take care of what they got.
We are for getting the best life you can out of your engine, and that's where this lies.
So there's a video out there that we did. You can find it on our website, which is what, Jay?
It's Parts Counter Gurus, man.
PartsCounterGuru.com, or it's on YouTube. Yeah. You can find it on YouTube.
There's links everywhere. Yeah.
And go watch it. Maybe pause this or go watch it, or go watch it after you finish listening to this podcast. But
I'm sure there'll be a red icon YouTube
somewhere.
icon floating around here somewhere.
But we basically talked about the negative effects that ethanol has on current engines. And the reason for that is typically because the current engines they weren't manufactured to run on the amounts of ethanol that we're putting into our fuel system today. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. 100% agree with that. Yes.
And let me take a step back for those of you that don't know what ethanol is, because I'm in your corner. I had to learn all about this. It is alcohol made from corn that is used as a fuel source that is in the United States is mixed with your gasoline. Now, General Motors says they have a flex fuel product. You'll see on gas caps it'll say E10 or E15. That's the percentage of ethanol that goes into a gallon of gas, so 10% or 15%. And there's a lot of reasons why I don't want it in my gas tank of my vehicles. One is that my Toyota FJ flat out says don't put E15 in there. It says that on the gas cap. But we are using corn to produce fuel, which does offset our dependence on petroleum a little bit, and I understand all that. And like you said, look, we're not trying to be for big oil or against the petroleum industry or for ethanol or against ethanol, or I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. There was cornfields all around me. I just know I've seen what it does to engines, and that's my like you're either going to have to get a different engine to run this stuff, or you're going to have to not put it in the one you got. So we reached out. We had Jay and I had a conversation. We decided to reach out to the guy that left us this kind of dissertation. In the comments, and we were, I think, both curious and just wanted to hear what he had to say, because we felt secure enough in the facts that we just had to know, right? I mean, what was your thinking on kind of how this was going to go?
Well, I was hoping that I was going to learn something, and you and I both are on the same page there, that we are very open-minded when it comes to these types of discussions. Yeah. And we've both walked away learning something in any conversation. I think the thing that I did learn is that there's still a lot of speculation. There's a lot of speculation.
Yeah.
And some of the conclusion that was drawn by this gentleman are not tests that I think that would stand up to anything really. I mean, you can't just throw a tank of E10 ethanol blend in the tank of a car and burn it out and say, well, it ran fine, and that's we conclude that ethanol is safe for the vehicle. It just doesn't work that way. There has to be a long period of time and data available to study that, and looking at the results of the engines and how well or not well they ran. You got to look at the wear patterns, what type of failure modes. There has to be an extensive amount of study on the metallurgy, and so there you go. So.
Okay, so sorry. Let me. Wow, just picked up right where we left off. Me stepping on your toes.
Right.
So, little bit of a technical glitch there, but I learned something too. It's interesting to hear, because this is fascinating to me, because we both sort of come into these situations and try to learn something always, right? Yep. I'm not going to tell you what I learned until later.
Yeah, and I know that's coming.
But why don't we do this? Why don't we? Okay, so we're going to air the interview now as part of the podcast.
Yep.
And then we're going to come back at the end of that interview and just kind of wrap it up and give them some closing thoughts. So I've had to edit this down a little bit because it got really, really long. And I did my best to not edit from the perspective of changing the comments and the opinions and trying to manipulate those. I really wanted it to be
Well, you wanted to be representative of what we were trying to
that's
convey
exactly
to
right.
each other.
Thank you.
Both sides.
So,
yeah,
it's a little bit edited, but not for the purposes of changing anyone's responses. How's that?
Exactly.
All right.
And I might,
Go ahead.
And I just want to say this too. On the upfront, I might add that Marc was very kind to offer his time to talk to us about this. It was a good conversation.
It was fascinating.
It was. So we'll watch the interview and enjoy.
Yep. Here we are. So welcome into the program, Marc. This is Marc Rausch. Has agreed to be our guest today to talk to us a little bit about ethanol. And Marc has a website and has written a book on the topic. Marc, I may get your website wrong here. It's theautochannel.com. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we have never met before, but Jay and I saw your comments. You had posted, almost kind of some dissertations on a couple of our. I think this whole thing got started with an ethanol video that I posted. And so Jay and I are both of the kind of the mindset that we're curious. Wanted to kind of peel some layers of the onion back and have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation with you about that. We have Jay. How long have you been in the automotive industry?
40 years.
Okay. Yep. And how long have you? So Jay has worked in the valve train side of things, designing valves, springs, seat keepers, guides. Yeah. Okay. How long have you been doing that?
In the aftermarket for about 18 years.
Okay. And so my relationship to this, or my background, I guess, is I'm more on the cataloging side. So I've got sort of how all this stuff connects together and parts and interchanges and all of that sort of stuff. I'm definitely more of a technical person, but I've worked in the industry also. So Marc, I want, if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about your background, and I guess maybe tell us a little bit about how your book came to be.
Okay. I'm basically a marketing, advertising, media guy. I'm a television producer. I'm a writer. I'm a director. We started the Auto Channel about 33 years ago as part of a television station that my business partner owned in Sacramento. And the outgrowth of that was the Auto Channel. I've been associated with car dealerships for very close to 50 years. I've done a lot of car advertising over the years, things of that nature. I've owned various types of cars, boats, and so on, classic cars, used cars, new cars, and so on. And so certainly in the last 30-something years, we've become just completely immersed in the whole automotive world. The Auto Channel doesn't mean just automobiles, it means everything automotive. So we feature boats and airplanes, general aviation. We feature railroading. I mean, anything that sort of moves, anything that you could say is automotive. I grew up in Brooklyn, in Queens, which are not hot spots for farming. So I'm not a farmer. I'm not,
right.
I'm not a distiller. Right. I'm none of those things. My frame of reference, and this is, by the way, this is true with my business partner, Bob Gordon, who grew up 10 blocks away from me, 10 years away and 10 blocks away from me in Brooklyn. And we didn't know each other until much later. Anyway, but so we don't come out of this farming background, this corn background. Our frame of reference would be that, wow, gasoline, it's great. You know, it's petroleum oil, it's great. It's part of America, it's fantastic. And it's only been because of our involvement in the Auto Channel and automotive things that we've gotten to know so much about ethanol, so much about biofuels, alternative energies, and so on. And now it's probably very close to 20 years that we've been spending a lot of time on alternative fuels, and that has molded our position and our opinions of ethanol and gasoline and diesel and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So the book reads a little bit, and I think I think you would say this. In fact, I do think you say this early in the book, that it's kind of from a position of energy independence, and and I would almost say in an attempt to kind of move us toward a more environmentally friendly position. Is that fair?
Well, certainly the first part of what you said is more correct than the second part, meaning that we started to really pick up speed on this, having to do with the economic situation, not so much the environmental situation. I'm not a tree hugger. I'm not an environmentalist. Somebody recently said to me, "So you're just an accidental environmentalist," and that may be correct because of how it has turned out. But that's not really that wasn't our bent. Our bent was to say we want something that's good for America. We want America to be strong. We want energy independence. And as we learned more and more about our dependence on foreign oil, that all came part of our position. And as we did more and more research having to do with wars over the last 105 years, basically every major war has to do with petroleum oil. So, and we could probably do, by the way, a whole 2-hour show on this subject alone. So we may not want to get too much into it, but every war that America has been involved in has to do with oil, with petroleum oil. And because of that, we've lost millions of people who have been killed in these wars, and of course permanently injured, disabled because of these wars.
So I would say, and surprisingly enough, you'd mentioned back earlier, you kind of started in a specific kind of car mindset and things that maybe flew or rode on two wheels, or you became a little bit more broad in your topics, and we've definitely experienced that too. I mean, Jay and I, there's a running joke that we can't go a week without talking about companies like Tesla, and I think, Jay, you would probably agree with this. When we started, that was the furthest thing from our mind.
Yeah, it was.
But Mark, kind of what you said, I mean, it's out there. EVs are out there, and it's a relevant topic now, and so ignoring it isn't really an option. So I've got a question for you. So this is from your book, and this sort of ties into what you were just talking about. You say, "I've never come across one person who spoke from personal experience. They quote lies told to them by the oil industry," and then you called them gasoline whores. You've got two now that are talking to you with performance data. Right. I think our position, and I guess maybe it would be good to kind of explain our position on this. Jay and I aren't really anti anything or pro anything, and as I think specifically about that E15 video that I did, the stance was, if you use, and I'm gonna put you in a position here to defend this, but if you use E15 in vehicles today that are on the road, over the life of that vehicle, you are going to do damage. So I think we feel like there are missing facts, and you're not getting the whole truth. Your book takes a pretty opposing stance to that. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So, yes. So I guess one of the, and you had mentioned in your book, like propane and natural gas are sometimes treated as the ugly stepchildren. I think our specific feeling on those things, and this is, Jay, I may just let you kind of run with this, but the engines that are in production today just simply aren't designed to handle those fuel sources long term, especially in passenger automobiles.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
So, Marc, you've got you've got a lot of chemical data in the book. You've got some metals data in the book. Do you have any engine testing data to sort of support your stance on ethanol?
Sure, and we could go back as far as over 100 years ago to look at all the data that was presented to Congress as part of the free alcohol bill, in which all of the top scientists of the day came forward to talk about how ethanol was actually a better performing fuel than gasoline. So we have all of that, and that goes through to all the years having to do with Harry Ricardo, who is one of the most famous and well-known engine designers. We have, of course, Henry Ford, the people who worked for Henry Ford. We have the scientists who worked at General Motors who invented leaded gasoline, but they knew and they said that ethanol was the superior fuel, and they believed that ethanol was going to be the fuel of the future.
So you did mention, I forget who it was, but that was it at DuPont? You mentioned that in your book, but I think the issue that we know about and are aware of is the specific, like, let's say cars over the past 10 years. Right. And the valve train damage that we're seeing because of these mix. So you're talking about running almost as an ethanol only fuel source, but that's not an option here in the United States. You're getting a mixture of two fuel sources.
Well, if there are a couple of questions, and first I'd like to go back to the beginning of something that you said, where I say in the book I've never run into anyone who offers firsthand experience. And by that, I'm referring to the people who I take on in the book, which are all of these professors and PhD kind of guys. And
well, those aren't guys working on engines. Those are guys. Those are chemical engineers.
No, I understand that, and I'll get to that in a second. But these are the people who I'm referring to, who come on and say all of these things, that the information given to them by the oil industry, and they never say that, oh, in my car I used blank, 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 and this is the experience I had. They seem to stay away from all of that. So those are the people that I'm referring to. Now, and the reason for that is that I say that is that it would seem to me that if a person was going to write something negative about E10, and many of the cases were people complaining about E10, not even E15, just E10. So these are people who I always thought, well, why don't you go rent a car and then drive over to some place that sells E85 and pump in a gallon of gas of E85 and see what happens. And there is never anyone that says that they've done that. Well, and when I've questioned people about that, like, so how do you know? What is your practical experience? They don't offer it. And there's one particular case that I refer to in the book where there was a gentleman who's a producer of a radio show, and he talked about how E15, he lives in Texas, and he talked about how E15 ruined his lawnmower.
I've had that happen.
Yeah, so this is a story from, let's say, 5 years ago. So out of curiosity, I did did some research, and I searched to see where you would buy E15 in Texas. There was no place that you could buy E15 in Texas. The closest place you could buy E15 would have been in the panhandle of Florida. So the person would have had to drive from Texas, whatever part of Texas he was in, through, through the states, the intervening states, to get to Florida, buy E15, bring it home, put it in his lawnmower, and then watch to see the lawnmower get destroyed.
Okay, so I will take that gentleman's place, but let's stick a tack in this, Jay. I can see you sitting on your hands, so I'm going to take you back just yes, Jay, or are you good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
The
Go
E85.
ahead.
Do you want to? Okay. So let me. So I have had ethanol ruin my chainsaw, weed eater. Now that's just E10 we're talking about, and these are 15-year-old devices, 20-year-old maybe. So that's stuff that I've maintained, but I absolutely have pulled open the carburetor and the tubing and seen it just dissolve.
Okay, so what you've seen happen to it is what happens. There have been engine mechanics.
What is that happens?
Well,
the degradation of the fuel system. What is it that exactly happens?
Well, mechanical parts break down. Right?
But these aren't mechanical; these are tubes. These are hoses and
tubing.
tubes.
We're talking fuel lines.
So what is
those aren't rated for ethanol. You can buy stuff with rated tubing in it.
No, see, here's the funny part, and you probably saw this part in my book, and if not, I'll just briefly mention it. I did a big study on what took place in Europe for 60 years, and during that period of time, all the major oil companies sold ethanol fuel. They sold it. They called it power alcohol. They weren't calling it ethanol in those days. They were calling it power alcohol or something like that. They used that in all their vehicles, right? I mean, they used it throughout. It was promoted throughout Europe, throughout England, and it was promoted as being cleaner, safer, less expensive, and more powerful. So we have decades of experience. Now, between the period of time of the starting of the use of leaded gasoline, early 20s, until the late 50s, when DuPont invented a particular rubber called Viton, gasoline and tetraethyl lead was highly corrosive to the various parts, to the rubbers. So all of that took place during that time all of that breakdown was not ethanol. And in fact, in the United States, there was really no real use of ethanol.
Right, there wasn't ethanol at the pumps.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it was only gasoline. Now, some people will argue with me and say that gasoline is not corrosive. Gasoline is highly corrosive.
Oh, sure it is.
And tetraethyl lead was extremely corrosive. And the way to counter that, they had to add in ethylene bromide, which is corrosive as well, but that stopped it a little bit. However, even with that, the rubbers were being degraded, corroded because of gasoline. So there were changes made, and DuPont finally comes up with this thing called Viton. Now, when you say that you break down, you look at something that's 10 years old, 15 years old, well, engines break down, parts corrode. All liquids are corrosive to a degree. One of the most corrosive liquids of all is water. But with the right materials, the right treatments, water is not a problem at all. We drink it, right? We wash with it.
Have you ever seen the valve train out of a 3500 Caterpillar that's run on landfill gas? Have you ever seen the results of that?
No.
I have.
Okay.
I've also seen the results of what ethanol will do to a valve face and valve seat inserts in modern engines. We're having an increase of, if you'll let me finish, what we're having an increase of right now, and I've spoken with several of my colleagues in the industry that are big repair shop centers that install valve seat inserts and valves on a regular basis. And what we're seeing now is an increase of a lot of pitting on the valve face. The valve seats are pounding out as well. Now, let's go back to when we removed lead from fuel. We went to unleaded, right?
Right.
What happened? What happened in those years? What was the prominent effect of the engine? Do you recall that?
Well, I know emissions got reduced, right?
Well, yeah, emissions got reduced. That's right. But they had to do it through a series and a chain of events to get there, and which was the introduction of the catalytic converter, which was an absolute cluster.
Right. Okay, but
to the point
I'll pull
where
your chain. So what is the mystery answer?
Well, the bottom line is when you remove lead out of fuel, you removed a very good lubricant, and you started to see the valve seating area pound out within the blocks. So there came the big valve seat suppliers that went to a high nickel type material.
So they had to change
They had to change the metallurgy in order for unleaded fuel to run. They had to rethink these things.
And the stance I think we're trying to make, and I just want to reiterate this, Mark, is the changes have to come after the fact, and right now, with so many cars older than 5 or more years out there, those changes aren't in place. And this still doesn't really answer the my statement of E10 damaged my small engines, because I'm not storing gas in those. I don't store fuel in my engines, so it's wear over time, right? It's dissolving fuel lines. Where is the data that shows that doesn't happen?
Well, the data is that you can go to places like Brazil, where they've been using E15 since 1978.
Well, actually, they're using a lot higher concentration, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it is a lot higher. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. They started using E15 and higher. They've been using ethanol blends since the 30s.
All right.
In 1978, they mandated... Actually, in 1978, they mandated a minimum of about E18 or E20. 2 years later, it dropped to E15, but now it's E27, and
right.
it will be moving to E40 sometime, probably by 2025. Mm-hmm. So we have all of the vehicles that are there, all of the equipment, all of the small engines that are in Brazil that are able to put up with this. The engines,
repair in Brazil is through the roof.
Through the roof. I worked
but that's through every place.
Mark, I worked.
No, it's not here. Not here.
Look,
sure it is.
Let me say this about Brazil. I have factual information for you right here. I worked with a valve train supplier out of Brazil.
You can say Rio Silence.
They are Metallurgica Rio Silence out of Rio do Sul. They're a supplier to the OEMs. They're also a supplier to the aftermarkets. And in the aftermarket, they're supplying valve guides and valve seat inserts. And I can tell you the number one problem that the folks of Brazil are having out of their engines are they're pounding valve seats out and wearing valves. And the other thing that I can tell you is that in preference, if they could use gasoline, they would, specifically because the engine gets better mileage. It runs more efficiently with the gasoline.
And
an engine.
Go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
An engine gets better mileage with gasoline if it's optimized to run on gasoline.
There you go. That's right. Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
We don't have anything that's optimized for ethanol.
But I don't say anything different. I say very clearly, many, many times in the book, that engines that are optimized to run on gasoline will usually get better miles with gasoline because they're optimized to do so. Mm-hmm. But if you took the same basic engine and you optimized it to run on ethanol, it would get comparable or better miles.
Possibly, but we don't have that. And so we're not pro-gas. Like I could honestly care less if gas disappears tomorrow, but what we have today is not compatible without doing damage.
We are pro-engine survival.
There you go.
I have to go. So Jay, you're mentioning about the valves, you're mentioning about the material, you're mentioning about the pitting and all that stuff.
Correct.
Okay. I would like to see samples of that, examples of that, right?
Okay.
Videos of that, in which it was proven or it was shown to happen on ethanol, not on gasoline with ethanol.
Sure. I have some
ethanol.
friends. I have some engineer friends at the Eaton Corporation. Both one working at the Belmont, Iowa plant. I also have some good friends, engineers over at their plant in China. I can get you data. If you want data, I'll be more than happy to give you that information.
So up to this point, that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist on the internet.
It's existed. It's out there. They're testing this stuff.
No, there are comments about it.
No. I can get you data, Mark.
I'm not saying. No, that's fine. And I'm willing to, like you, right? I am a person who wants to know this information.
So it would actually be in their interest, these companies like Eaton or Rio Salense or, whoever's making valves, to sell more engine parts. I mean, I guess here's where I'm going with this, is thinking about Jay and Jay's background in valve train manufacturing. At least in the short term, it's a bigger win for them, for customers to use fuel that's going to do engine damage, because
sure it is.
They're going to sell more engine parts. But
that's right.
We don't.
But you don't need
want
to
that.
Do it. Engines wear down by themselves. It happens naturally.
But
I think you say
you're trying to
accelerating.
Yeah,
you're accelerating. You're accelerating when you're using.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
But wait,
Mark.
wait. It's not beneficial to do a so we use it, right? What I would like to know, and the reason I'm mentioning I would like to see this data. I'd like to see the video of this. I would like to see photographs of damage done by ethanol, not ethanol in gasoline, but ethanol, because ethanol in gasoline.
What's the difference?
Right?
I mean, you're okay. So
because it's the gasoline that's causing the problem, not the ethanol.
No, it's not.
Wait. So all we would have to then do is look at a correlation between when we started. Okay, back to this guy in Texas with the small engine, that his lawnmower. All we'd have to do is look at when ethanol started to be introduced in some of these areas, and then look at the metrics of the rate of engine repairs, right?
Well, except that, and as I point out in my book, in the chapter that discusses what took place in Europe, that if you go back and you look for information about damage caused by ethanol in those 60 years, you don't find any. There's no material. There's no literature about it. You can go through.
Why would we even need to look that far? Why couldn't we just look in the United States?
Well,
there should be.
Because in the United States it wasn't used, and in the United States.
Yes, but the last 20 years it has been.
Sure.
There should be ample data out there for this. I can't understand how you don't have the data, Mark. Honestly, if you're writing a book on this, you should have data to back it up.
I have many comments by people.
Comments are not data. I mean, I'm commenting right now. I mean, we need. If you want data.
You took the material that supposedly gets impacted by ethanol. That material, whether it's rubber, plastic, metal, has a name. What is the name of that material?
What,
right?
Are you asking me what the name is of the material in the valve?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
They range anywhere from 21/4-inch stainless steel on the exhaust up to Inconel 751. On the intake side, typically normal intake material, which would be like I say a 40 CR, which is the Chinese version of 8645H.
Right.
There are variations of stainless steel, 21/4N, 23/8N, 21/12N, I mean, the list goes on and on. And the reason why you have so many different variations of materials is because of the environment that they operate in. And what I am telling you is this: in my research and development days, what I have seen over the last 15 years in this industry, working for the aftermarket, is that the OEM has not changed any materials in that regard so that they would survive in this environment. There's no changes happening.
So nobody disagrees that if we made an engine designed to run on whatever fuel source, right, that it would be engineered for that fuel source. But just back to our kind of key theme of this, the problem is that hasn't happened, but we're introducing a different fuel source, but no changes in the automotive line.
Right. But okay, so now let's go back to the types of metals. So you said those types of metals. I provide in my book a list of companies that have databases, charts that talk about compatibility of the types of metal.
I have those kind of charts too, and I mean, I trained with Dr. Yushu Wang.
I'm looking at one of your charts, Mark. But the problem that I have is there isn't any wear data. So, like for example, this chemical compatibility from Graco. There's another one from CP Lab Security. So it talks about the chemical compatibility of aluminum, carbon steel, 304 stainless, 316. Right. That's great, but are we combusting it? Are we leaving it sit in a container? Like, compatibility used in what application? Are they combusting an engine against that material, or are they just storing ethanol in it?
Well, the only way, and that's a good point. So now we have to look at examples of people who have combusted those metals. Right?
Well, and that's where Jay comes in, right? That's your valve trained engineer.
And so we have whoever you can show that will say, so look, here's a video that shows what took place from ethanol on this metal. I have videos that show that it's the gasoline, and that actually the gasoline with ethanol had less effect than the gasoline without ethanol. Right? So we have, if we start from the position that to say that, okay, this metal is as compatible with ethanol as it is with benzene, toluene, xylene.
That's sealing ethylene stuff. Yeah, that's all the seals and gaskets materials that that like Viton. That's
no, that's not true. That's not true. Benzene is corrosive to metals.
Right, but he's talking about your components that you're mentioning. Those aren't used in the valve train. Those are used in tubing and seals and gaskets.
Yeah, gaskets. I mean, they're in the valve train. Valve stem seals
and gasoline. Benzene's in the gasoline.
I'm talking about the effects in the book. You're talking about the effects it has on Viton and where Viton comes into play and all that stuff.
Right.
I completely 100% back you up on the fact that Viton is the premium material to be used in modern day engines right now. They're used in injector sleeve sealings for diesel engines. They're used in injectors. They're used in valve stem seals for diesel engines as well as gasoline engines. I think, for me, my question, the bigger question is going to be, when you have these tests done, Mark, is it apple for apple? So you conduct the test on this vehicle, and are you using identical alloys to compare gasoline wear to ethanol? Do you have that information? Is that what it is?
Sure. Yes, because that's in all the information having to do with
these are independent studies that you've had done, or is this like GM and Ford having it done and you're getting that information from them?
Well, in some cases it's the manufacturers, because in some cases it's the information that was presented again in front of Congress in 1907, 1906.
Well, so let's look at this from another.
This argument that this discussion that we're having is not new. It's not 20 years old. It's not 30 years old.
No.
It's 150 years old.
So here, let's look at this from a different perspective. So I guess my question for Mark is, what at what point, what would it take for you to see damage in an engine, in a vehicle, and say, I attribute that to ethanol?
Okay.
You know what?
Oh, great. That's terrific. So I'll give you my real specific responses to that. In 1984, I purchased an S1 Bentley that I imported from England. It ran on, once I had it here, it ran on, of course, leaded gasoline. Then it ran on gasoline with MTBE. Then it ran on gasoline with E10. I had the car for about 24 years, and it was my everyday driver. It was my main car.
It survived?
Yeah, in fact, I wound up selling it.
Do you still have it?
No, I sold it.
Darn it. I was looking for a picture.
Well, so
I sold it about 10 years ago to a limousine company in San Francisco.
How long did you put E10 in it?
Probably 6 years, because
in
California we had E10, or we had ethanol and gasoline a little earlier than other people.
Yeah.
But my point of saying this is that, so I used it during all this time. People and friends of mine, members of the Bentley Owners Club, Rolls-Royce Owners Club, when we were moving from leaded gasoline to MTBE, they all freaked out because they all thought it was going to destroy the engines. Well, it didn't. Had no effect. Then they went through the same thing when we moved to ethanol gasoline. But it had no effect. So that's my personal experience. I destroyed a lawnmower one year in the early 90s because we had a particularly cold winter, and I didn't use the lawnmower for 6-7 months, and I left gasoline in it, and I didn't put Sta-Bil in it. So at the end of that time, when I went to start up the mower, it wouldn't start. It was destroyed, right, because of the gasoline. It wasn't because of ethanol gasoline. It was because of gasoline. It was because of gasoline with MTBE. Now, I purchased about 7 years ago, I talk about this in the book, and I have pictures. I purchased a 2002 Ford Taurus non-flex fuel. And I bought it specifically so that I could do very strenuous long-term testing with E85. And I talk about in the book that I've test-driven cars now for the last 30-something years, and probably have test-driven well over 2,000 cars. And as I would get the cars, and as GM and other people were starting to talk about E85 and flex fuel and all that stuff, I would try a gallon of I would try a gallon of E85 in a non-flex fuel car. Had no problem. But saying that with 1 gallon, 2 gallons, 3 gallons on a very short-term test, it doesn't mean anything. And that's why I purchased this Taurus, because I figured the $3,000 or so that I was paying for the car, one way or the other, I would have a great story to tell, right? I would either have a great story to tell to say, oh, man, it destroyed the engine, or I would have a great story to tell to say it had no effect. Well, it had no effect. And not only did it have any bad effect, I would say it had a positive effect, and that positive effect shows up in the book, where I have the copy of the smog certificate, which shows that basically there was zero emissions, right, from the car. And that's not normal. Now, at the same time, I also purchased a CNG vehicle because I wanted to do the same kind of testing with CNG. And so earlier you asked and you mentioned that I've said that CNG and propane is the the lost child, right? The stepsister, the adopted child of the oil industry, and that's true. And it's the oil industry that for so many years said such negative things about CNG.
Well, sure.
CNG is a very good fuel.
The concern that I've got here is and in looking at this story that's in the book about the testing, your focus seems to be on short-term storing of fuel and what that does to seals, gaskets, tubings, and all of that, kind of stuff. And while that can be affected by the fuel source like ethanol, I think the picture we're trying to paint is this is damage that happens in an accelerated fashion over thousands and thousands of miles or years, and it's going to happen more quickly with ethanol in the tank, which was the purpose of my video. You've used several examples of just throwing, a tank full of E85 and then seeing what happens. Well, nothing's going to happen because it's not long enough of an experiment. You in the book mentioned, I think it was a 2009 motorcycle that you've got, and you left it sit for about 5 months and started it up, and everything was fine. So, see, no problems from ethanol. But I think the concern that Jay and I are trying to present is it's combusting that fuel over 20,000, 30,000 miles. It's going to deteriorate the components of your engine faster because ethanol is lower octane, because it burns hotter, because it absorbs moisture better than gasoline, and all of those things. That's this thing that the specific point I think that we're missing here.
Ethanol burns cooler, not hotter. But now
okay.
Let me go back.
But does that matter? Does it make a difference in the outcome? You're burning something at a different temperature than what the engine was designed for, regardless of hot or cold.
But I don't focus on short term. I focus on long term, which is why I have so much discussions in the book, and in general.
Where are the long term examples in your book?
60 years.
Right, but specific, like engine long term, like where is an engine that you put 30,000 miles on with ethanol, and what are those results?
Well, certainly that would be true with my Ford Taurus.
Okay.
I had the car for 6 years.
But where's the data? Did you have the valves analyzed or anything like that? Did you?
No.
Okay, so the question is,
you're just driving it, and there's no problem,
okay.
so it must be
Ask
fine.
me the question. Let me answer it. Right.
Okay.
I took it to get smog tested, and the smog test showed the smog test showed results that the operator didn't believe.
But
so
that's
he ran the test
not an
twice.
engine test. That's an emissions test.
Well,
that's
I
the
understand.
exhaust, right?
I understand, but what I'm saying to you is, and what I say, engines are made to, or you can't make an engine, I should say, that won't degrade over time. You can't have moving parts that don't degrade.
We're not saying that. We're saying that ethanol degrades it more quickly if you mix it with gasoline and burn it in an engine that wasn't designed for it.
No, there's no proof to that. There's no proof.
Okay.
I've got 17 years of failure analysis, that's what I did. And I can tell you that valves and valve seat inserts decline rapidly in those environments. Let's have this conversation, Mark. Now, I do not disagree with you at all that you could run ethanol in an engine, because you can. I agree with that. But I do disagree with saying that, oh, don't worry about it, it's fine, if the OEM says it's okay. EPA is mandating the percentage of ethanol, correct? The government is saying, hey, you need to, that's where this comes from. They have to comply by certain end of year. Therefore, the models they're going to say it's going to run on that. And I can tell you that nothing has changed. They've made strides in it over the last 5 years. I will tell you that. Here's the changes that I saw. I saw changes to the valve train, processes to the valves, processes to the valve seat inserts, especially on aluminum engines, aluminum cylinder heads, I should say.
What do you mean by processes?
Okay, so there's types of ways to cast an insert, or you have sintered materials, right? You have powdered metal is what we know it as, which is very popular in aluminum engines. And there are processes to add lubricity to these castings. change the metallurgy, having a low corrosive type part. In other words, that it can defend against these alternative fuels. Those are the types of changes that I have seen. Some of the other processes on the valve, like normally you would see a chrome-plated valve. Now we're starting to see, even in modern engines built here in the USA, that are being nitrided, which was a very common thing in Europe and South America. Why? Well, they've been running alternative fuels for longer than the USA has, so they've been trying to build these things better. And we're trying to do the same thing, but we are still not there yet to where you're not going to have accelerated wear running ethanol. And the fact that somebody is telling you that it's okay and it's fine, if it says on the gas cap, do not use it, then you should probably not use it.
It says it on the gas cap because it's a warranty, because it's a liability issue, not because it's a mechanical issue. It's an order for, just like insurance companies. A warranty is an insurance policy.
That's right.
So like any insurance policy, if you get insurance on your house and suddenly a flood happens and you say, hey, insurance company, I need you to replace my house, and they say, sorry, you didn't have flood insurance, or here are the various things under which we're going to be exempt, right? Sure. There's always those kinds of things. Well, that's exactly the same thing. So the same vehicle sold in the United States is sold in Brazil. Right. And in Brazil, it's okay for E27. And for here, it's not.
And in the same engine, and then you look at the repair data of that same engine which is where Jay was trying to take you, in Brazil, which is much higher, and they're selling a lot more valve train parts for that engine in countries that are running a higher mixture of ethanol, and that's
where's the data for that, Jay?
I can get it for you if you'd like it.
Okay.
Yeah,
do you want the data?
I would,
yeah.
And I'm not saying it confrontationally. I'm saying
no. We get it.
I'm spitting back
this
information that I have obtained. Right.
We're not pro gas. This isn't
we're pro engine survival. I said this earlier. We're pro engine survival, and I can't, with a conscience, tell someone that, it's okay to run that in there. Trust me, it's in the pump. It's coming out of the pump. It's all you got to use, so it's okay to use it. When that's just not the truth.
Okay, but it is the truth. But earlier, Keith, you said in regards to the metals, the materials, and the compatibility things, you said, well, here it shows that it's compatible with the metal, but we don't know how it's going to stand up. Okay. The big significant...
Specifically, how are they testing that, right? So are they storing it in the metal? Or are they combusting it? It doesn't say.
Right. Okay. But here's why. You'll see where I'm going with this. So many people write online, write to me, post comments, in which they position that take the position that all the ethanol has to do is come in contact with that metal, and it's going to start to degrade it. It's going to start to eat it away, or the rubber, or the plastic, right? And that's how they talk about it. They talk about, you put it in your car, and overnight it's going to break down, and it's going to start to eat away. Well, none of that is true, but more importantly, the significance of showing the compatibility charts and databases is to say, well, look, here's the material, here's the rubber, the plastic, the metal, here's the ethanol, and it says it's compatible. And then you look and you see that, well, what's not compatible with that is benzene, and benzene is in all gasoline. And then xylene's not compatible, and toluene may not be compatible. So you have all of these things that are not compatible with the metal or the material, or either not compatible or equal in compatibility to ethanol. So to say that it's ethanol that's causing it is wrong.
Well,
Now,
okay, but
right?
is it really that big of a percentage of people that are arguing overnight that this fuel is causing? So just
Yes,
looking in
yes,
your
of
book,
course.
there's what, like 400 pages of correspondence toward the end or something like that? And the majority of that correspondence has to do with things like the reduced octane rating, the engine's not being optimized for the fuel source. I mean, I'm just not seeing the ratio that you're talking about in your own literature.
Ratio of what?
Of fuel storage being the prevalent cause of damage to these engines.
But fuel, it's a known fact. I mean,
You just made the case that most of the people complaining are complaining that when you store fuel, it's what's causing the damage. And what we're saying, and what a lot of the excerpts from your book are saying, is that's not it. It's these other factors like the reduced octane rating, the different temperature rates of combustion, the water absorption qualities, that kind of stuff. So I'm just not seeing the correlation.
Well, I'm not seeing the correlation of why you're not seeing the correlation. To me, it's a question of that information is there because for all these years, all of the same problems that we're having today are problems that have existed with engines for 150 years, right? There's never been a time when engines didn't need repair and maintenance and care. And
but that can't be your explanation. You can't always go back to, well, all engines break down, because what people are, even in your own book, saying is, but not this prematurely, not at this rate.
But all engines do break down. They do. I mean, it's not, you can't say there is no.
No one is saying that. They're saying that it's happening faster with the use of ethanol in the United States.
No, I'm saying it's not. And I'm saying the proof that it's not is that you go back and you look for 60 years in which they used ethanol, not only in England, but throughout Europe.
How about we just go back and look at the last 10 years here?
Right, 10 years here, and
but it's made up information. It's information that comes from the oil company.
What's made up?
The
repair data, valve train parts being ordered.
Oh, okay, Mark. So can I give you a little bit more?
Wait, Keith,
okay.
Hold on one second. I mean, Jay, hold on.
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
You say there's more valve train parts. There's more of this parts.
Sure.
There are more cars on the road today than ever before.
That's correct. That's
right?
correct.
So of course there are more things happening. More people are driving. So you can't say that, today there are this many more than there were then. Sure.
All you do is you look at the number of cars on the road, and that's a federal. I mean, just for roundabout numbers, we can look at the Federal Highway Transportation, how many vehicles are registered, right? And then you use that as a ratio to the repair rates that are done now versus 10, 15 years ago, right? So the ratio is going to be, the key identifier here. It doesn't matter how many more cars are sold today. Where we're going with this is like Jay had said earlier, they're starting to engineer stronger materials in these newer engines. So in theory, those won't need to be serviced as soon. But this older stuff that's 10 or 15 years old is really suffering, and the repair rates on that are higher than they would have been maybe 10 years ago.
Here's where I can come in with,
some actual knowledge?
Yeah, some actual knowledge. Yeah.
Okay.
So, let's go back 60 years, Mark. In the automotive industry, we've come a long way since way back when. We've seen a lot of changes to the fuel over the years, and we've really kind of had to put our hats on and sit down at a table together and try to engineer, build a better mousetrap.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're continuously doing that. years ago, the big auto industry, the automakers, they threw a lot of money at assuring that the customer experience with the product at the end of the day was a quality product and it would survive in today's environments with what was available to the consumer to run. So they had a lot of proving grounds. There's where your data came into play. Okay. I'm thinking maybe, just maybe, that you don't have the data, because this is the trend that I've seen where they've kind of stepped away a little bit from the proving ground, and they're kind of letting the consumer provide them the data by sales. In other words, they look at the average. Look, we're in a time where people they'll see a new car come out 2 years after they've owned what they have, decide they want something new. So then you never hear the full story. How did they babysit that car before they sold it? And then it goes into somebody else's hand and they dog this thing and it doesn't run right. Yeah, I mean, there's so many variables involved in data that.
But what you're saying is a really interesting thing. I'm saying it seriously, because I look at it almost completely the opposite of what you just said, meaning that I come from a time in which my father and my friends' parents changed their cars every 2 years. That, to me, doesn't happen anymore. And that, like, religiously. And I would say, and these weren't rich people, but these were people who, they had to have a new car. And if not every year, every other year. And so they did it on a very regular basis. And I would say that if there is a greater preponderance of repair statistics now in terms of people going into shops and so on, it's because you can't work on, the average person can't work on his new car, his newest car.
That I agree with, yes.
You can't get to it. On my Bentley, I did many things to the engine myself, right? I when I blew a fuse, it didn't use fuse, it used copper wire wrapped around two posts. So I did that, right? I went and bought copper wire. In fact, I bought a wire that had rubber insulation. I stripped off the rubber, and then I wrapped the copper wire around the thing, and that became my fuse. So I did things like that. I changed certain things myself on the Bentley because you could do it. Prior to that, I had a 56 MGA. I used to do things to my MGA because you could, right? You'd open up the hood and there it was. You saw it, and you could get to it. So you can't get to things today. The average person can't get to things. So if something is in shop more, I think it's in the shop more for that. The other thing is that there's a heck of a lot of upselling that goes on. You bring in your car to get oil change to Jiffy Lube, and Jiffy Lube doesn't just do oil change anymore. They do all kinds of things from, vacuuming your car to cleaning your lenses, your headlamps, to everything else. And they want to do all these other kinds of things, right? So, and it's like, no, I just want a $21 oil change, please. I don't want to walk out of here with $500 in
that topic alone could turn into a. Yeah,
right.
These are the kinds of conversations we like, because I was thinking the same thing, Keith. This could be a podcast topic on its own. Sounds to me, Mark, and I really appreciate this, is that you sound to me like you're open to further discussion on this with us, provided that we can get you some data. I mean, I would certainly love to have those conversations and kind of show you and give you my
I'm laughing because to the point that this was supposed to be a 15-minute.
Right.
Yeah, and
it's an hour and 15
This is going to be a murderous
This is great.
podcast.
And this is why I said to you, Keith, that I could go all day, right? I could go days on this. So yes, I am open to this.
That's perfect.
That's fantastic.
Totally open.
Let's leave it at this, and Mark, I'll give you the final word here. We do unfortunately have to, just because we're way over time wise, but first I want to thank you for having this conversation with us. Second, I want to say that your initial comments with regard to kind of the senseless reasons for loss of life and that sort of stuff. I think we're fans of that. I believe I can speak for Jay as well, and so we appreciate that about you and the efforts that you're making to try and prevent that. Let's talk again. I really appreciate kind of we love conversations like this. Feel free to throw a plug out for your website, book, social media, whatever you want, and we'll give you the last word here.
Okay. Well, and I greatly, greatly appreciate you having me as a guest. It's very difficult to find someone who actually wants to debate me on these things or really discuss it in such wide open terms. Most of the people that I come across are people who are paid by the oil industry one way or the other, who come out with books or who go on to radio shows or talk shows.
They work at Jiffy Lube.
Right, and which is okay, by the way. Is okay.
It's fine, yeah. I don't have no.
Pennzoil and Jiffy Lube used to be a key sponsor of the Auto Channel, so we always have
We're just joking.
A warm spot in our heart for them. But so I greatly appreciate that you would want to do this and would do it again. If anybody would like to go to the Auto Channel, it's theautochannel.com. My book, my 641-page book, is available to read for free online. You don't even have to register. You don't have to put your name in. You don't have to do anything. You just go on and you could read the book.
You will think, if you read that book, one way or the other, you will be thinking as you read that book, which is always a good thing.
Thank you. And that was the point. And the point really is to say there is so much information. There is so much history that people don't know. And people don't know, even people in England, particularly young people, they have no recognition. They have no understanding that there was this 60 years of time in which power alcohol was sold. And it was sold not only for use in passenger vehicles, passenger cars, but it was sold for use in boats and in propeller-driven airplanes. And so I get emails from people who say, "Oh man, they want to raise ethanol in England or Germany to E10, and what's it going to do to the cars?" That's like, what are you talking about? The cars ran on that stuff. And in fact, for so many years in Germany, especially, but Germany and France and other places, where they had no access to oil, they weren't oil-producing countries, and they had to rely on alcohol. And so all of these great old German cars, all the old Benzes and Porsches and BMWs and Rolls Royces and Bentleys and Aston Martins and Austin Healey's and all this other stuff, these were all cars that could have run on ethanol. And again, you go back and you say, man, there must be a lot of literature about people who are just screaming their heads off about this stuff, about using ethanol, and there's not. There's no information about it at all. And so I say, if there were problems, how come we don't know it?
Well, we'll keep looking.
Yeah,
okay,
we're gonna keep looking.
So,
yeah.
and that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Let's Mark, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think the wheels are turning for all of us right now. So, hey, have a great rest of your week. Thank you both for your time today, and it was a great conversation.
Sure was.
Let's do it again. Okay, so that was essentially the interview, edited down a little bit.
Yeah.
So Jay, let me. You and I have had a little bit of time to digest that interview. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you. We all had preconceived notions of kind of, because we had never met Marc before we did that interview.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think from a kind of the person that you were expecting? So someone that was in favor of ethanol, and
right.
and knowing the comments that you saw on our stuff out there, right?
Right.
And sort of you and I having this discussion. Tell me what you expected to meet, and then what you thought of that compared to what the person that you actually talked to.
Right. When I read the comments, I thought, wow, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to learn something today, because I expected that he was some sort of chemical engineer.
Yeah.
I thought that he had been in the automotive engine industry for a long time. That's who I am used to working with when I see things like that, because of my background in failure analysis and understanding what these types of alternative fuels, whether it be compressed natural gas, landfill gas, ethanol, whatever. I know that there are more people out there that know more than me about the actual fuel.
Right.
Okay. And I know that. So I was really excited about having this conversation, but it just didn't pan out for me. I did not, it was not what I was expecting, put it that way.
So I had a completely different set of expectations versus what played out, which thank God for curiosity. Now, he said something very early in the interview process that sort of disclosed his passion about being opposed to, oil, and there's a lot of unnecessary war because of it. And that just reminded me that, people have conviction. So a lot of times we all want the same thing, but we have different ideas on paths to take to get there.
Correct.
And this was a little bit of a reminder to me on that. He's a really sharp guy.
Yep.
And he did a lot of research, and he was not afraid to stand his ground. I mean, look, man, he walked into a situation where it was kind of 2-on-1.
Yeah.
And was open
fine
to having the conversation.
Yeah. He was fine. He was very, like I said, it was a
held
very
his own.
nice, very nice man. And
I feel like, to sort of bring a little bit more focus to your point, he was careful to gather the facts that he could find. But unfortunately, I don't think I read most of his book, and I don't think that he had enough access to engine rebuilding data.
Correct.
And that seemed to be the missing. So my kind of theory when we walked into this was, we've got somebody that's missing some details.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that part of it I was not surprised on. I was surprised on a lot of the other parts of it in a good way.
Right.
And I enjoyed the conversation enough that I want to hang with Marc again. And I don't. If we just hang with people that tell us we're the smartest guy in the room all the time, what fun is that? I want to hang out with guys that challenge me.
Exactly, and that's what I was expecting. I was thinking that was going to happen.
Yeah. I think we were challenged, and you were challenged not from a you don't know what you're talking about perspective, but from a you had to prove that you had the, this was a little bit of a job interview. You had to show that you had the knowledge of valve train engineering.
Right, and here's the thing: what I took from the whole thing, and at the end of the interview, we've invited him back to keep the discussion open, and we're going to be gathering data. I'm already working on it. I've reached out to some folks in Brazil, and down in South America in general, to see if they can provide me with actual engine run data and the testing and failure analysis that they have for that part of the world. And
he said, and this is a guy like us, he said, I'm open to considering things that I may not know. Or right. I'm paraphrasing there, but he gave us that. He said, I'll take a look at whatever you got.
Right. I did get a bit of a sense, though, that what I was telling him about what was going on in the industry I felt like it kind of fell on deaf ears, man.
Well,
in a way.
I know what you're talking about, and I saw that a little bit too. And here's the weird thing for me is, you and I have these conversations. Everybody, Jay's the calm, collected one, like 99.999% of the time, who brings me back to even keel. And maybe it's just a little bit of me looking in the situation going, what would Jay do here? That I sort of put myself in that situation, and I thought, okay, but this is you're dropping a thermonuclear bomb on this guy right now, and he's in shock. Like, you're disclosing things to him that he's never heard articulated in that way before. So I think you have to give that process time to work. I think any of us in that situation might respond in a similar way. There's going to be a little bit of a denial first.
Right.
And I think that, maybe there's a recalibration. Well, he's still trying to get to the same result, which is an honorable result. But now you can't tell people to go put, E85 in your car without it doing harm over the long haul.
Right. And again, I said it many times within the interview. If you'll go back and listen, anybody wants to, just rewind it and go back to it. But I said it many times. I never once said that ethanol will not run in an engine, because it will. We know that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether or not it'll run an engine, because we know that it will, and it runs fine. I mean, but over time things happen, and this is what we're talking about. Don't think that. I think Keith's whole thing, your gas cap, okay? We say on our podcast all the time to follow the manufacturer's suggestions. If you veer off of that, you're taking a chance of causing some severe damage to your engine.
What he's talking about, Jay's saying, I have a gas cap that says don't put anything above E10 ethanol mix in your tank. And we got the direct argument from Marc that, no, you can put whatever you want in there.
Yeah,
so
it's just not true, guys. And I will, until I have a manufacturer who has done the study and I can see the changes that have been made to the valve train, then I have a platform to work from. Then I have a base. I have something I can work off of. And that was the whole thing. We talked about the alloys, the 21.4 and the 23.8 in. When you start seeing the same engine platform that has been run for 10 years, and then all of a sudden you see the valves go from chrome plating to a nitride, then they're adding stellite facing, and then they're changing the exhaust valve from a 21.4 in stainless steel to a 23.8 in or an Inconel. There's a reason for that.
So and let me just sort of in layman's terms say what they're doing is they are strengthening the toughness of that valve and the durability of that valve to withstand more abusive conditions, i.e.
the environment,
ethanol, right?
Yeah, the environment that it's going to be in is much more harsh than what it's ever been in before.
I'm here to translate Jay for you, ladies and gentlemen, anytime you need. Some people use Google, you got me.
Right, and for all you diesel folks out there, I worked heavily in the diesel aftermarket as well. The Detroit 60 series, which is a staple in our lives. If it weren't for the Detroit 60 series, these long haulers wouldn't have much to work with. I mean, because it's one of the number one engines out there. But when they went from just standard diesel to low sulfur and then ultra low sulfur diesel, it started posing some problems. Then they were adding EGR, exhaust gas recirculation, in these things, and that really stepped up the wear, the heat, and everything in the engine.
As I like to say, that just thoroughly jacked up the whole situation.
Well, it did, and yes, it did. So what happened is the original 60 series Detroit went from a standard, it's a high grade 21.4 in modified with a molybdenum added to it for strength, and that was what the original exhaust valve material was, and the original intake material was just a Silchrome 1 material. What they did with the addition of the EGR, and then to be able to combat the wear and the conditions that it's going to be in using ultra low sulfur diesel, they changed the exhaust valve to Inconel, and they upgraded the intake valve. What they did is they induction hardened the seat face rather than stellite face it, and that's a whole other podcast that we'll get into at some point. But those things were added for life to give service life. If they had
Longevity.
not done those, exactly. If they had not made those changes, that 14-liter would have been, that EGR 14-liter would have been just a massive, massive warranty nightmare for them.
So
it wouldn't have survived.
And I, we've had so many conversations about these kinds of things, like off the air, that this is all old news to me. But we can certainly get into spending some more time on this. It sounds like there's some interest out there. I think that So here's what I learned. I learned that, and I already sort of knew this. It was reinforced. A lot of times we all want the same result, the same outcome, but our vision of how to get there can be very different. And it's just fascinating to me that, the more we sort of got into kind of big picture stuff, as we talked with Marc, there was a lot of agreement on, hey, not being dependent on petroleum, not necessarily a bad thing. Having alternatives that you can use if you want to, fine. Now, if you don't want to use them, don't use them. If you like gasoline engines, great. Good for you, right? Right. You go use them. But having choices is usually not a bad thing. And I think the thing that you and I kept kind of sticking to is, but not at the expense of doing damage to reducing the quality of life of your engine that we have now, right? And that's kind of what this all boils down to. So, we're kind of doing this a little bit in reverse order, but you've got some apparel on today that I think we need to discuss, right?
Yeah,
I like the bus, man.
Yeah. I promoted this thing early on our Facebook page. This is a friend of mine who has a couple of festivals that he has each year. Spring into summer has already occurred.
It's a music festival? Okay.
Music festival, yeah. It is in Indiana. Tickets are on sale for the fall out of summer version of this thing. They have a great lineup. Just go to springinfalloutofsummermusic.com, and maybe we'll put a link up on our website for that. They sent me some apparel, so I told them I'd wear it on the podcast.
And for those of you not watching the podcast on YouTube or Apple, some sort of Apple video device, please go subscribe on YouTube, even if you just listen. But thank you for whatever method you're doing. Jay is wearing a black T-shirt with a almost neon signish. It says Spring into Summer Music Festival. It's got a cool little RV bus looking thing on it. You don't have to hold it up, Jay. If they can't see that enough that they need me to describe it, you holding it up isn't.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that you were getting all the details.
Oh, I got you were doing it for me. All right. See, once again, I missed the big picture. All right. So, okay, cool. So, and you can find. Go ahead.
Yeah, the same guy who designed this T-shirt is the same guy who designed our.
Ah, there you go. That's Daniel, right?
A little bit of connection, little Daniel, that's it.
So you can find us on partscounterguru.com. That's our website. There is a podcast links section at the top where you can click on that tab and it'll take you to every flavor of podcast app, software, Spotify, Google, Android, Apple, whatever, man. Whatever your preferred method of receiving podcast is, there's probably a link to it on our website. Social media, we're on Facebook as facebook.com/partscountergurus.
Correct.
We are on Instagram at the Parts Counter Gurus.
Yeah.
If you go to our website at partscounterguru.com, please click on the Amazon banner at the link at the top right before you buy your Amazon stuff, and that way we get a little credit for it. Doesn't cost you any more, but helps us out. Also helps us out if you just subscribe on YouTube. I know you guys are tired of hearing us say that, but it does make a huge difference. the Become a Fan section on our website if you want to know about contests, current events, stuff like that's going on. There's a tab on the top of our website called Become a Fan. Jay, what am I missing?
I don't think you've missed anything, man. I mean, outside of our tax number.
Right. Well, I don't know that I want to put that out there, but you know, maybe if I showed up with notes more like I by the way, these were the notes that for that interview. I just basically took his comments and wrote on it.
You remind me of someone.
What? Who would that? Oh man. Nah. So yeah, but I'm not that bad, am I? It's just the little pieces of remembrance.
For those of you who can't hear anything on my end, any responses, I was really smiling very largely. No comment.
So, you got anything else?
No, other than the fact that I'd like to say there's more than corn in Indiana.
Okay, yeah. Maybe a couple music festivals, that sort of stuff.
Music festivals, yeah.
Well, they build RVs there.
They do build RVs there. They build a Subaru up in Lafayette.
A what?
They used to build Lafayette.
A what?
A Scooby-Doo.
Ah, the car. I gotcha. Now, I thought you said Subaru there for a minute. Scooby-Doo.
Well, or as we like to call them out here, Seattleites.
Seattleites, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's the biggest camping car, and it's the outdoorsy types love that thing, man.
Get you around, man. Pack a dog, pack a sandwich, go up to the mountain.
All right, so thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for subscribing. We will see you next time. Until then, that is Jay over there. I'm Keith. And how about this time? Instead of some clever pun from me, go find somebody that has a different opinion than you and offer them an adult beverage and sit down and have a conversation. You might learn a few things. That's what we found to be true earlier this week. How about that?
Imagine that. Yeah. Talk to people.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.
Take care.
Three, two,